What's up, heathens? How ya doing? Today on the show, we're going to be going over more of the Dinos of Eden book with Paulogia. If you will, please go down to the description and check out Paul's channel. There'll be a link down there. Just click it, go there, subscribe if you're not already. But today in the book, we're going to be going over how Ken actually calculates time, how in the world he gets to dragons being in the past, and how those connect to dinosaurs, and how Ken actually relates dinosaurs and the other dinosaur-like creatures to like the fifth and sixth day of creation. Also, there's going to be a Kentosaurus that has a bunch of like things on its spikes or something with a Japanese guy. I don't know. It gets crazy. So stay tuned. Okay, so what is up with this Exodus 2011 verse?
That is actually there. So a lot of times people like Hugh Ross, and for those of you who don't know who Hugh Ross is, he's kind of Ken Ham's nemesis on the Christian side of things because he preaches an old earth. He's bringing in verses from outside of Genesis so that he can shore up his idea about this Yom being a literal 6 days. It's weird, subtle hermeneutics that he's bringing in a children's book. It's almost unnecessary. He's really preaching to the parent who's reading this at this point.
Okay.
All he's doing is trying to say that these days are used outside of Genesis as well. And he also likes to point to, if it means thousands of years, that would mean that our work week should be thousands of years long, which of course makes zero sense anyway.
Well, yeah,
but that's why he's doing it.
Yeah, and I mean, our current calendar was put in place like during like the Romans' reign, like when they were setting the rules for everything, they created our current calendar. So I don't know why he thinks that the Roman calendar or our current calendar is like retroactive to like day one of creation.
Well, he's not trying to actually make real, as we'll see throughout this rest of this book, he's just throwing anything against the wall and whatever sticks. So if you're a 10-year-old reading this book, hopefully you're not 10, maybe you're 5 or 6. This will sound like it makes sense, and you can make up history. History goes to the victors, so that's what he's doing.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, and then he finishes up by asking, what does all this got to do with dinosaurs? I have to
get the dinosaurs.
Yeah, I have to agree. What the fuck does this have to do with dinosaurs?
Well, we'll find out. It's quite interesting on day. Well, we'll see what happens on day 5 there. But he's using dinosaurs as best he can in these pictures.
Okay, so on this particular page, he's basically going through like the basic history behind, our discovery of dinosaurs. Talking about Sir Richard Owen finding these large bones, or rather not bones, but fossils, which are different than bones. Which I don't know if he said it now or earlier, but I remember him saying in the book that we know dinosaurs existed because we find their bones. And while there may be some bones out there of like dinosaurs that are actual bones, I really don't know. I mean, do we actually have like dinosaur bones, or are they all fossils, Paul?
Well, they're all fossils, because fossils in general terms is defined as just any evidence of remains of an animal or other life form. So we consider fossilized remains, scat, poop, shit, whatever you want to call it, that's a fossil. Footprints are considered a fossil. So it's this colloquial term that he likes to conflate, obviously. And of course, we don't find, despite what people want to say about soft tissue in dinosaur fossils, they're not bones. Again, this is iron, this is other minerals, this is keratin that has remained and been permineralized, it's been replaced with stone. So yeah, every bone we find is really stone. That has replaced bone. But he wants to pretend, as we know, that, there was a freshly killed tyrannosaur that we just, stumbled across yesterday, or at least people in Bible times. And kids love pictures of Sir Richard Owen, let me tell you. That good call on this, Ken.
He looks creepy as fuck in that one, doesn't he?
Totally does. Looks like he's got a severed hand in his hand.
Well, I mean, I can just imagine him poking his head around the corner like, hey, kids, You want to buy some dinosaur fossils? Oh, man. Okay, so, he goes on to talk about how dinosaur just means terrible lizard. And so the dinosaurs actually refers to to the actual mammals, or not mammals, but the actual animals that were living on the land and not necessarily the ones that were in the sea or in the air. Those are dinosaur-like, whereas the actual dinosaurs were just the land animals. And he talks about how that connects to like them being created on day 6 and shit like that.
Of course, that's not excellent history either, because the pteranodons and some of the other water-based stuff were colloquially called dinosaurs because we didn't know about a lot of this stuff in the 1800s. So he's playing pretty fast and loose with his history, which I know is a big shock.
Yeah, it totally is, Paul. But yeah, I mean because when I was growing up, I always just referred to any like lizard type creature that I knew existed during the time of dinosaurs. I always just referred to them as dinosaurs. So I mean, colloquially, I mean that makes sense. But I mean, you're right that he's not exactly hip on his history.
No.
And then at the bottom, leading into the next page that we're about to look at, the first 2 people, Adam and Eve, were also made on the 6th day of creation. And then he goes into his whole, we can be at 100% absolutely sure that humans lived with dinosaurs and domesticated them and all that shit.
Yes, absolutely. Because we proved it, because we had a Bible verse telling us that the Bible was accurate. I don't know if you missed that part.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, obviously the Bible validates the Bible. I mean, that's the central tenet of any of this creationist bullshit.
So this page, for some reason, Ken takes one of the most boring sections of the Bible possible. Because it's a kid's book, and he puts one of the genealogies smack dab in the middle of the page and makes them read it all. I feel bad for the poor parent who's trying to read this to their kid as they're trying to go to bed. They got to read through all these names, but whatever. Ken puts it all in there to try to let people know how we know that the earth is only 6,000 years old. And this is really the passages of the Bible that he leans upon to say, well, we added up the ages of these people because clearly some of them lived 900 years and 600 years because the Bible says so. He put this in there just to establish the age. So boom, right at the end, 6,000 years because of the list of names you saw above. So what more evidence do you possibly need?
Well, I mean, obviously, don't you take, when I want to figure out how old the earth is, I mean, I just go through all of my great-great-great-great-granddaddies and I add up their hundreds of years ages, and then that's how old everything is.
Absolutely. That's what makes, like, for example, if I want to remember when, the U.S. was founded, I try to remember which ancestor of mine lived then. I don't use any other sources. I just figure out which ancestors I had that lived then and, add up those ages because what makes more sense.
Yeah. And I mean, as another side note here, I would like to say how this totally negates all of our radiometric dating and all of the other ways that we know that the earth and the universe in general are very old and are a part of this whole deep time concept. I'm amazed at every single page in this, like how much science he has to forego and substitute with the Bible.
That was kind of the point I was alluding to, is that when we look at anything in history or whatever, we try to find multiple overlapping bits of evidence. Like even on a crime scene timeline, they try to find various things that we can anchor specifically in time and cross-reference against those. We don't just take an arbitrary someone's story about it and take that as evidence. If you can't cross-reference it with at least one other data point, you've got nothing. The other thing that bothers me about this page is, this is the start of where I got disappointed, because it looks like these kids are they're virtual in this world, right? They don't actually exist alongside this dinosaur. Can they be eaten? Like, what's this blue? This looks like Jedi Ghost version of them.
I was thinking the exact same thing. Because, I mean, it's like the girls down there like, oh, gee, Billy, do you see this shit? This guy over here is eating a fucking fruit. Look at these birds over here. Oh, goddamn, there's a dinosaur. Luckily, we can't be eaten because we're Jedi ghosts.
But yet she's interacting with, it looks like she's interacting with the plant here somehow. Like, it's moving aside for her. Like, this is very shoddy science fiction, and that makes me angrier than all the rest.
Well, yeah, because, like, I mean, they went through the gate to come here. You would think that they're physically here, but at the same time, they're wearing VR goggles, and it seems like it's a VR unit, kind of, and they got the blue ghosty thing going on. I don't know what, but it's all fucky.
I wonder if this is like Creation Museum version 3 will be this. Like they'll eventually get VR stuff and they'll just throw people into the Garden of Eden. Here you go, kids.
Oh, I would not be surprised if Ken Ham has invested a little bit of money into producing some kind of VR Garden of Eden simulator. I mean, I can see him throwing money at it and trying to get people to fund it.
Absolutely, because he could franchise that shit. He could put it everywhere.
Oh, yes. Bring the Creation Museum to you. You can act like these kids in this book right here and pet yourself a dinosaur.
Wow, I hope I live that long.
Yeah, I'd love to see that. All right, so this one, Ken Ham goes on with the whole naming convention that we developed much, much later, obviously. You've got Eve up there that's like feeding a dinosaur in her nude outfit, and then you got Adam down there that's like, oh, yeah, Eve, feed him that berry, why don't you? They only look like compies or some shit. There's no way these are scavengers. They definitely eat fruit.
There's a few problems with this. Like, I don't know if you have a dog or a cat or anything like that, but man, if you ever have, like, if you're wearing shorts and your dog and your cat jumps on your lap, that's not comfortable. They're digging claws in. This is a freaking dinosaur.
Well, yeah, if you notice, like, if you look at her leg, he's got his claws dug into that bitch's thigh.
The other thing I'm noticing is look how coiffed Adam is. Like, they obviously had like brushes and, beard trimmers and things like that. Look at how sharp he looks.
Yeah, I know, doesn't it? Although it does kind of look like he doesn't know how to eat, because I feel like he's about to just sort of shove that handful of berries into his face. Be like, oh, nom, nom, nom.
You're exactly right. He's gonna mash it into his mouth. Well, he's the first human. He didn't perfect this shit.
I would not be surprised if he later on tried to wipe his face with like a tree.
Wait, but look at that iguanodon. Does it have opposable thumbs? And 4 fingers? It does.
It's got 4 fingers, and it kind of looks like it's got thumbs, and it's going, "Ay, plants."
Well, good science here, guys.
Yeah.
I will say though, I went through this book in general, and we'll get to some of the mistakes. But in general, if you only read these little science outsets, the kids would actually be fine with that. He did at least stick to things that were moderately true. Like, so iguanodon does mean iguana tooth, for example. So good on you, Ken.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that kind of stuff, I guess people can cross-check with like actual, I guess, history that they can see. I don't know. It seems like special pleading all up and down. Okay, so on this page, though, the actual words, if you can make it past these two idiots on the page, basically he shits on evolution and how evolution is taught in schools and all this other stuff, and how evolution is just not correct at all if you believe in God. And then he ends the thing with, why then do we not find the word dinosaur in the Bible? Despite the fact that the previous page pointed out how it was that scientist that coined the term, so why would the term be in the Bible?
Oh, he's definitely going to get there. But actually, he teases us with Job here. And when I was a kid, for those in your audience who don't know, when I was a kid, I believed every word of this kind of thing. I was totally indoctrinated with all this stuff. I loved Job because I was fully convinced that Job was talking about dinosaurs when it talked about Leviathan and Behemoth and things like that. I was convinced that those were dinosaurs in the Bible. So this is an effective way to reach kids, unfortunately.
Well, I hate that it is the effective way to reach them, because we don't need kids running around being like, I wish I lived with dinosaurs still. All right, this particular page is quite interesting. Paul, what the fuck is going on with I'm really restricting myself here with the young man in the corner.
No, I think we already talked about the probing and how that's inappropriate.
Well, I mean, I don't know what's going on. It looks like a Japanese or a Chinese celebration, and apparently he's herding his little dinosaur around.
Well, what Ken is trying to make the argument is saying that it wouldn't make sense if dinosaurs were living with humans, that we wouldn't see them in secular history somewhere. So what Ken tries to grab onto is the phrase dragon, and he is helped by the fact that the King James Version of the Bible chose to translate a few of the Hebrew words as dragon. Because, of course, if you study this stuff, you know that the Old Testament is cobbled together mythology from all over the Middle East. So some of those legends made its way into the Old Testament. Boom. So he's got 3 cases in the Old Testament where the King James translated dragon, and he is going to conflate that all references of dragon in all history was actual dinosaurs. So what I imagine he's trying to do is try and evoke the idea of a Chinese, the kind of parades we have now that you see on Chinese New Year, for example, when they have those floating paper dragons that they do in the parade. They're trying to evoke that and say that really came from a real thing when they used to take a stegosaur for some reason and put, it looks like they put little shiny baubles on the back of the stegosaur, poor thing, and paraded it around. Like, they're just trying to say that these fantasies or these modern myths that we celebrate and follow across the world are because at one point in time, a scene just like this happened where we were parading a stegosaur through the streets of China and having a parade.
Well, actually, it's not a stegosaur. Can you read the name of that particular dinosaur?
That is a Kentrosaurus, like named after our favorite person, Kent.
I feel like if we had to represent somebody like Kent as one of these dinosaurs, this would probably be the last dinosaur I would pick. I have a pick later on in the book, and I'll point it out here in a second.
Perfect.
But yeah, I feel like him grasping for the straws of dragons being mentioned in the Bible, it just shows how desperate he is. But he's gonna try to link it to history, like you were saying just now, because we have this particular thing, the flag of the country of Wales, where it has a dragon on it, and then of course that's Charlemagne, I think, isn't it? Saint George. My bad, I'm stupid. That's Saint George fighting a dinosaur.
Yeah, and of course he does not seem to. It doesn't bother him that the beast depicted on the flag clearly has wings, clearly has like a spear on the tail, is spewing fire. Like, for him, that's all. He accepts that can be legend building, and I love that in a way, because I like to people who argue that. I kind of say, oh, is that kind of like the legend building we have in the New Testament, where Mark doesn't have that many outrageous things, but then Matthew has more outrageous miracles, and then Luke even more, and then when we get to John, Jesus is just doing all kinds of Avengers superpower shit. If they accept legend building here, at least I try and leverage that to talk about legend building in the New Testament.
Yeah, I like how he's like with the whole legend building thing. It's like he's supposing that the St. George guy was like, yeah, I killed one of them dragons. It's like, oh, was it big? Oh, it was huge. It had wings and a spiky tail. I shoved my rod deep inside that little sumbitch.
Yeah, well, that turned into fishing tails, I guess. The other thing they have to do when they concede this is they actually have to give some validity. They're not thinking it through. They have to actually then give some validity that there's a kernel of truth every myth around the world, right? Like they're in a way conceding that there's truth to all of these creation tales or whatever tales. And they do the same, like, of course, with Epic of Gilgamesh and things like that. They're trying to say, well, Epic of Gilgamesh, part of it must be true because they talked about a global flood. It's a weird concession that they make and try and contain.
It's very odd how they immediately credit, like, if somebody has an exceptional tale or a fantastical tale, it's like almost immediately giving credibility because it's fantastical.
But we're allowed to pick and choose out of those, but the Bible, 100% of it's true. We can't just pick and choose
exactly
out of the Bible.
All right, so what's happening on this page?
This is their excited day 5, where try to expand upon later the idea that dinosaur really means the land ones. If basically what you know about dinosaurs comes from the Jurassic Park movies, you'll know that they brought back some plesiosaurs, which were reptiles that lived in the water, or Pteranodon, the family of Pteranodons. I don't remember which one they have on this page, but basically what they're trying to say is on day 5, because God created water creatures and air creatures, that makes sense from dinosaur perspective, because cladistically, the Pteranodons and the plesiosaurs aren't as directly related. So they're actually weirdly absconding science again and twisting it to fit their narrative, trying to say that, sure, these flying ones were created on day 5, but the walking ones were created on day 6, even though, of course, from an evolutionary perspective, we know that that's not the order where it happened. These are kind of like whales. These are reptiles who came back to the water.
Right.
But he's trying to warp some of the science to fit the weird fact that air creatures, we know that, of course, we know that birds, came from dinosaurs. Dinosaurs had to be first because birds are descendants of dinosaurs. So he's pointing to the few things in the fossil record that did fly, and trying to say that that's what the Bible meant.
Yeah. Well, I'm wondering, I don't know if you'll know this, but he's got dolphins in this particular thing. I mean, I know that we're saying that, like, humans and dinosaurs existed, and that's bullshit, but, like, how far back do dolphins go? Like, do they reach all the way back to, like, dinosaur time, like the Cretaceous?
Creationists love to put dolphins and whales in on day 5 because they want to try and emphasize for the kids that there's no way that dolphins and whales descended from a hippo-like creature. Like, they definitely want to try and put a big hard no on what we know about the evolution of mammals who live in the ocean. So they're just trying to preemptively put a stop to that and say, no, God specially created these creatures that so happen to have the same morphology as the land ones. For some reason, we made their DNA first, and they have fingers and they have hind legs buried in the blubber there. But no, we specially made them on day 5.
Well, of course they specially made them on day 5. I mean, God crafted them with the clay of heaven.
That's interesting. We know man was made by clay, but I think these just sprung forth. Of course, they love to say that we believe in abiogenesis, and that's stupid. but obviously, these things all sprung forth. Even if you believe, that it's true, you believe these things sprung forth from something. Yeah, that's idiotic.
Well, yeah, no, I see. This is one of the backwards concepts that I think that Christians have, is that Christians often say that, well, you think that, like, all this life just sprung out of nothing with no reason for it and all this other shit. But it's like, well, no, actually, you think that everything sprung out of nothing. Like, you legit think that it just appeared here. And the way that you reconcile that is you put God up there with his magical fucking wizard hat on.
And that's what's frustrating, because even though I was still a young earth creationist, why wouldn't you want to study exactly how God's words translate? What mechanism in nature, did God's words spring forward? Like, why wouldn't you want to study that? Even if you believe this, that's what's frustrating. Why don't you want to know how? Why do you just shut your brain off at what? And when they point to, the Christian scientists of old, Pascal and everybody else, those people were trying to figure out how God did things, and I'm okay with that. Why can't Ken allow the people who believe this shit to at least ask how?
Yeah, I don't. Well, I mean, to ask how would be to doubt God. So, I mean, if you're doubting God, you're already fucking jumping off the path,
I suppose.
Well, heathens, I hope you enjoyed this segment of the book review. If you did, go down below and leave us a comment letting us know which part was your favorite or which part was the craziest. Paul and I would love to talk to you about it down in the comments section. While you're down there, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to Paulogia if you haven't already. Why aren't you? Get the fuck over there now. Don't forget to stand up and use your voice. Bye, heathens.